What's up guys, it's time for part 4 of the ARG Iceberg. We're almost halfway through this berg and things are starting to get weird. You know the drill, the further down we go, the more obscure the entries get, so let's get at it. This is My Milwaukee. This lesser-known ARG ran from 2008 to 2009 with a pretty definitive endpoint. The original piece of content involved an 11-minute video that comes off as an advert for the great city of Milwaukee. The first few attempts feature residents of the city claiming that this was their Milwaukee, followed by a number of various attractions throughout the city. But after this short intro, the real calling for the video steps up. At about the 3-minute mark, the narrator casually mentions, with containment and decontamination well underway, young professionals are flocking back to Milwaukee. Nightlife is thriving as though nothing ever happened. But there's no mention of what happened, and the narrators continue forward with this speech about how great the city is, as well as a tiny comment about finding partners other than humans. Up to this point, we've only seen subtle references to Black Star, but around 4 minutes, we hear a concrete reference to this company. Shortly after this, we see a couple drinking and dancing, and we begin to sense that oh so familiar discomfort that's found in many ARGs. We see likely various facts pop up while they're dancing, and then a final fact with intentionally short appearance on screen with uncertain meaning. Then we see the couple walking out of the bar and walking separate ways. The narrator then gives a hip talk to the teens that will be moving to the city, along with some friendly advice to never travel alone or forget your rebreather and flare gun, again with no context around the warning. Here is where we hear the first reference to the God Seed fragments chasing you and leading them to Class K rated facilities. We then hear the narrator arguing with somebody in the recording studio and the narrator saying, "Throw him to the God Seed fragments." After this, things start to become a little clearer with reference to people leaving in mass. The narrator says they don't blame us for leaving and Black Star doesn't either. They are offering us a free stipend of dark bucks and 2 years of free housing from Black Star. We're then further introduced to the story of Black Star creating a god. After a short clip of the narrator speaking with an adventurer, again featuring more hints at the creature beneath the ground, we get to see their random anime credit thrust upon us. Unfortunately, a lot of the ARG's follow-up content has been deleted, but from what I've inferred from the web, we had a lot of additional sources from this ARG. Sendine, the reported creator of the project, went to a lot of trouble to create a number of additional social media accounts, leaving comments on various pieces of content leading to additional steps. During this ARG's initial showing, we were able to see a countdown timer in the top right of the website. This has a sort of Umbrella Corporation type of feel to it, except with this, Black Star has a more vocal and seemingly more shady version that is handling the contamination. It seemed that this company bioengineered a creature known as God Seed and forced a quarantine of the city. You can find a number of people alluding to additional pieces of content, including an account seeming to discuss about ebooks. However, it led people further into the ARG. These fueled this ARG, but since nobody has really kept up with it after its finale, it's difficult to track them down all in sequential order. This apparently caused a major buzz at the time from real residents of Milwaukee, as they were mistaking it as an attempt to keep people away from the city. Lasagna Cat. This introspective ARG can be difficult to read between the lines. It begins as a web series that reenacts famous Garfield comic strips. It was produced by Fatal Farm, who has also created a number of other bizarre entries on this chart, as well as Adult Swim's infomercial line. There's the ever-present awkwardness in these videos, just like many other ARGs. The first videos posted on the YouTube channel reenact various Garfield comics with an added laugh track. It then displays the comic strip it was based on right after. After this, it will show a music video that's relational to the comic strip that we just saw reenacted. We see a couple dozen videos created in this same manner, all posted from the same date in 2008. All except for the very first video, which followed a more simplistic version of the same format. So it seemed the creators demoed and tested the audience reception for the projects in 2007 and released the compiled work a couple of months later. The series went quiet after these videos were released in 2008. However, 9 years later, the series received a few new entries, taking the hidden meaning as well as the quality and production value to a whole new level. After a few teaser trailers came out advertising a seemingly new season for the series, we're given a video that encourages people to call a toll-free number number, requesting you to state your name and your number of sexual partners. The videos take on a whole new level of creativity and production as we see a number of what appears to be behind the scenes videos, with Odie and Garfield creating amateur videos. One video in particular shows a particularly unfunny comic strip and then follows up with literally an hour-long breakdown of this comic strip, its deep symbolic meanings, and the genius that created it, Jim Davis. With the improved production value of the new videos, we're given increasingly bizarre and twisted videos after these comic strips. One comic strip was even recent, from a time between the original Lasagna Cat videos and the new ones. The series culminated in a 4.5-hour-long video that actually featured recordings of all the call-ins from the phone number. They appeared as characters that knocked on the door. Literally this, over and over and over for 4.5 hours. We see a number of hidden messages in the newspaper that was being read by the characters, some in reference to the phone call, others in reference to a time loop that the characters seem to be stuck in. The day seems to be getting later throughout the video until finally an older version of John Arbuckle appears at the door himself with his claim of 2 sexual partners. However, the John Arbuckle that answers the door chuckles a bit and corrects the man, saying John Arbuckle 0. The old John Arbuckle walks away through a strange environment where we see several mannequins and a feral version of Garfield attacking him and turning him into worms. All the while, we're hearing audio recordings of who appears to be the creator of Garfield, Jim Davis, talking about his cartoons. We then see an incredibly visual and symbolic clip of a woman giving birth inside of a toilet stall. She speaks something in a different language that translates loosely from Polish, giving birth to a human curse, being unable to receive grace, and her soul being swallowed up again and again. We then see a visual of Garfield being born from the woman. There's a lot more imagery and symbolism featured in the lengthy video, but I won't go too in depth on it. However, I will give my own opinion on the meaning of this. Keep in mind that this is art and it's meant to have your own interpretation to it. But my thoughts are this started as a blatant mocking and pointing out how unfunny the comic was with the original video in 2007. After the positive reception, the team decided to extend this further with the initial series of videos. I still think their intention was not necessarily malicious or rude, just to point out the irony in such an unfunny comic being so beloved and revered. However, the new series of videos extrapolated even further onto an examination of how Jim Davis must feel after so many years of being defined by his own artistic creation. Just like many people, Jim wanted to be revered for his vision and creativity, not necessarily a single man who only lives with his dog and inconsiderate cat. This is what the hour-long video was supposed to point out, the type of praise and adoration that an artist wishes to be known for, especially since the narrator in that video emphasizes that the characters in the comic can be replaced by anything and it still retains its value and wonder. The final version was truly the element that pushed it into the upper echelons of the ARG realm. This video, in my opinion, was meant to embellish the sad life that an artist might feel if his creation outshines and outlives him without the credit for the work being attributed to him. Garfield was the perfect comic strip to parody with this analysis of an artistic journey. The team behind the ARG did a wonderful job of satirizing the meta behind being an artist, as well as incorporating real people to further emphasize a way for the creator to improve his own perception of self-worth by comparing his sexual partner number with others. If many people also had 0 partners, his own perceived value would not be bad comparatively. But again, this is just my own thoughts. This could be much different for each person, and really it may not be what they meant for it. Nevertheless, this is a super fun ARG. Teletubbies Updates. So this is not one of my favorites for a number of reasons, but before I go into them, let me explain what the gist of this ARG is. It starts out as a Twitter account that appears to be a fan-made account based on various Teletubbies facts. However, that's really just a title, and outside of the occasional image from one of the characters in the show, there is very little content about the show itself. Mostly it was just nonsensical posts, many of which were eventually deleted. The tweets began to take shape as a conversation held between himself, known as Dave, and his soon-to-be ex-wife Sharon, who ironically created her account on the same day as her husband. The messages between the two devolved from begging to absolute murderous lunacy. The Twitter account actually threatened other content creators on Twitter in their descent to help fuel the ARG. The story eventually moved to Dave murdering Sharon and her whole family. After this, the user claimed to murder and kidnap other people, seemingly gloating over his accomplishments on Twitter. Oftentimes, the user would reference Satan and cryptic messages like harvest time. At the time, this stirred up a lot of controversy controversy due to its graphic nature. However, after people pointed out the glaring mistakes in the ARG's storyline and development, people lost interest. To me, this is an ARG that focused a little bit too much on shock value and not necessarily substance, mystery, or deeply thought out plot lines and elements. Maybe I just didn't pick up enough into it to read further between the lines, so maybe you can find this one better than I did. Nevertheless, this just wasn't one of my favorites. Forgotten languages. This entry is on the far opposite end of the spectrum compared to the previous entry. Forgotten Languages is an organization that communicates in their own language and has produced various highly thought out content on a plethora of subjects for over 10 years, complete with factual links for source material. The topics range from paranormal to spiritual to philosophical to political ideology and more. You can tell these works were meticulously created, and you can tell that time was spent on them. They also create pieces of music on YouTube with psychedelic and what looks to be highly advanced mathematical shapes, symbols, and designs. Although some of them feature different graphic visuals and others are simply completely different, like a decoding of Cassini discus, which could be a tool used in their communication. In a wonderful interview with the creator taken by Elder's Vault, he sums up the site here.
Mission is to recover the small, suppressed amount of knowledge.
Do you think that there is knowledge that isn't accessible on the internet from normal means?
Oh, certainly. The amount of knowledge currently available on the internet is just a small fraction of the available written knowledge, as most of our information remains exclusively on paper in libraries, whether public, private, or personal. Our mission on ForgottenLanguages.com is to gain access to that knowledge and learn from it, grow, expand our horizons as a global race of people.
Going on, we come to find out that there are 35 masters that contribute to the content of the website, and the followers of the master's teachings are able to consume that content and learn the wisdom that the master is sharing. He goes on to say that the language that is being communicated derives from a specific vocabulary that is necessary to communicate the information. He states that there are powers and effects behind certain words and sounds, much like a spell or incantation, and that specific sound is necessary to communicate an idea or concept, and there's a massive connection between sound, mind, and power. The interview is actually very fascinating, and I recommend checking it out. I'll put the link down below. The creator of Forgotten Languages seems to be very well spoken and stable in his delivery, making it sound very genuine and authentic. He also uses very sound reasoning in his answers. He goes on to state that the music that's being published via their YouTube is an alternative way to gain knowledge, as music is a very powerful way to induce altered states of consciousness that are required to access primordial knowledge. They might also use videos as a method of interpreting their text, as it can sometimes have multiple meanings. Upon being questioned on their values, he replies,
"Knowledge is what guarantees free will. Hence, we believe knowledge is freedom. Knowledge comes in many ways of language. It is just but one. Depending on how knowledge is, you need to take one or another approach to access it. This also implies that there are other life forms, different biologies, and mental disease, and if you wish to share information, you need to fully understand those life forms, make them you."
Elder questioned him about why information is being kept private via secretive languages, to which he replies,
"Simply because we believe the average person is not ready nor willing. Many of them would not be interested in hearing a single thing, as they most likely believe it to be falsities, non-truths, false statements, pointless in our modernized technological society, which is ever so creeping away from the deeper truths and meanings truly means to be human."
The creator later explains that languages simply don't have the capability to explain certain aspects of reality, and must evolve and adapt to further explain certain ideas and concepts. One language that can describe all elements of life is impossible. This was a great interview done by Elder's Vault, and it really adds to the validity and depth of this ARG. This is by far the most enjoyable ARG I've had the pleasure of researching. The amount of effort that's gone into this project is immense, with very little payoff monetarily, so there's obviously a reason to keep doing it. I'm very curious to see what the project leads to, and I'd love to learn more about it if it weren't hidden behind some cryptic wall. If any of you have any additional information about this one, whether it's positive or negative, please comment down below. I'd love to hear more about it. SVV. So these entries are getting more and more strange as we proceed, but I'll do my best to sum up what I'm taking from this particular ARG. The Kabbalistic SVV organization, or Soladitas Volteres Volantes, starts at the website humanisbeing.com, where one must apply to become a member. Upon application, you're subjected to a series of puzzles and trials in order to test your qualifications on whether or not you're applicable to their membership. In the FAQ page, they answer questions, but they raise more. While being compared to Cicada 3301, they state that they seek different qualifications and unique talents, exceptional imaginations, profound visions, and that their application process required certain spiritual praxis rather than cryptographic techniques. Tucked into the FAQ, we also learned that applicants are approved as members will receive Legion and Being/Becoming. And as one of the final questions, we see a series of numbers with no explanations behind it. All throughout the website, you can find a maze of different links with various symbols and different languages communicated. When you read between the lines throughout some of their pages, you find that the SVV was established to promote research, psychosocial analysis, hermetic initiation, and training on introspectral ability and temporal phenomena. When read further, you begin to see that this organization seems to be performing what they call psychial or neurotopographical cacophony, or what translates loosely to mental discord and chaos, in order to stimulate systematized energy stimulation to extract a form of energy from you. They say it might also be considered as psychic somatism or spells or verbal evocation. So this ARG is pretty interesting because it relies on both shock value with the idea of extracting power from individuals, but it also has a heavy veil of secrecy, exclusivity, and puzzle solving. There are many elements of religion as the root of the order based on the Kabbalistic rituals and meanings. This is definitely one of the more interesting, complex, and cryptic ARGs that allow people to dig as deep as they want and be rewarded for their efforts. Lucid Dream Project. So this ARG is one of the more eccentric and complex that I've come across so far, and I'm honestly not 100% sure I've found the exact ARG that this is in reference to. However, I do believe that the gist is the same within each of the lucid dreaming ARGs, which some have actually merged together. I've never experimented with lucid dreaming myself. I had an older mentor figure tell me about his experience with it, and he said it wasn't worth exploring, so I haven't dabbled into it. However, the long and short of lucid dreaming is the ability to control your dreams while you're experiencing them. I've found a couple of ARGs that are supposed to take place within your dream, solving puzzles and seeking out various things while inside of your dream. When describing their system, they describe it as confusing, much like how you would feel during a dream. There's supposed to be a way to choose to explore this ARG further while lucid dreaming. I don't know exactly how this works. Perhaps there is a way you can tap into a specific dream similar to how you would join an online server in a game, or perhaps this functions like SCP where you log your lucid dreams and what comes about. This might be the case as on various discords they have sections where you can submit your dreams and even receive approval from the higher ups. There's also people mentioning how experienced players can utilize their knowledge and barter with new players. I couldn't find any further information on these IRGs, but the premise seems fascinating, although a bit convoluted to the everyday person like me with little to no experience with lucid dreaming. Gunslinger Pro 2009. This ARG puts an interesting spin on things by placing the human element taking the antagonist role instead of the AI. There's only a handful of videos on this YouTube channel, and the clues to what's really going on are really not very apparent at first glance, especially if you're unfamiliar with Team Fortress 2, the game in which this ARG is constructed inside. It is structured to look like a content creator making meme and tutorial videos within the Team Fortress creator space. However, several clues indicate more is going on behind the scenes. Often throughout the videos, we see close-up clips of each of these ragdoll characters placed into the game. The faces on these ragdoll characters depict a horrified or pleading look to them, sometimes darting their eyes in panic. In the second video, it appears that the blue spy is breaking the ragdoll status and trying to get help through the video screen. The player quickly comes up behind the blue spy and zaps it out of commission before ending the video. In the following submission, you can see the player giving a tutorial on creating a mechanism that allows the ragdolls to appear as if they're moving. The ragdoll is taken on a ride and mocked as it flies behind the player's vehicle. The next video is a bit more confusing as it's taken from the perspective of a spider-looking creature crawling through a dark room. The player then finds him and the video ends. It could be presumed that the blue spy has been mutilated and attempting to escape. The next video shows a clip of a line of ragdolls being mowed down by a sentry gun. The first ragdoll that appears in the video has eyes that are darting back and forth in what looks like panic. The video of the ragdolls being shot down also has a low quality filter, making it appear as if it's some horrific act of murder like you see on various parts of the web. And the most recent video added to the channel shows a tutorial on creating a sled within his world. He takes one of the ragdolls with him on his ride down the snow mountain. At the end of the ride, it seems as though it breaks its ragdoll status, gets off the sled, and begins congratulating the player. Immediately, the player yanks the ragdoll, silencing it in the process. So the predominant theory for this ARG is that the player has found sentient ragdolls and is playing a murderous god, torturing them and rebuilding them similar to how Sid from Toy Story would treat his toys. This is an interesting premise for an ARG, but obviously there's not a whole lot of content to peruse through. If there were more to it, I think this would have a lot of potential to be so much more. Found on the Tape. This is another ARG with an inconclusive finale from what I've seen. On this YouTube channel, we see only 3 videos of black and white, grainy filtered footage. We're not granted a whole lot of context, but a lot of imagery and codes can be seen throughout the footage. The first code seen has been deciphered, and it sends you to a link to download a game mod where you're stuck inside this filthy room. The only exit out of the room leads you to a jump scare from the ghostly face that was seen in one of the videos. And this face is also the represented image on this tier of the iceberg. There was an email found that had an autoresponder set up that featured the response, "I'm stuck," and it led you to a map download that featured a dark tunnel system that you were forced to crawl through. Again, your only option to escape would be to fall down a deep tunnel where you would presumably end your character's life. A hidden binary code eventually revealed another map download, which led to an even bigger tunnel map that was more elaborate and featured a finale where you were chased by a mysterious creature only to again die at the end of the map. The spinning triangle here in this video is thought to be another code that has yet to be deciphered, and there's been no further discoveries within this ARG, so we're forced to deduce our own meanings behind it. 2 of the most common theories are that this is a killer that's metaphorically being chased by the face of his victim, and the only way to escape the haunting is through facing a real-life white screen finale. Or another theory is that since the most recent video has the lowest number in its name, it could be the first canonically. This would place the tunnel system first and suggest that the story features someone lost in a tunnel, unable to escape. However, when he finally escaped, he's paranoid from the monster chasing him and begins filming everyone around him. Perhaps the monster that was chasing him even escaped. What are your thoughts on this one? Like and subscribe. Cheers.